Hey, it's Ben. Welcome to the podcast. I am super excited to be sharing with you the 5 steps where you can go 10x in your brain, your body, and your business. And in this episode, we'll be having a conversation about how to actually go 10x. This is the transformational part of the system. Remember, I just talked about there's 5 steps in going 10x. The first one is vision, getting clear on your vision. The second one is getting clear on the obstacles, whether internal or external. This is about going 10x, how to actually create transformation. The next one will be implementation, where you take action, where the rubber hits the road, when we start moving in and getting results. And then the final one is about support. These first 5 podcasts are a gift to you as a thank you for listening to this podcast. Enjoy them. There should be some really actionable steps in there. If there's anything you hear as you're listening to the podcast, just feel free to reach out to me. I love sharing this information. It's my life's work. And I know that by listening to this and implementing just 1 or 2 things, it's going to make a significant difference in your work and your life. Now, a way to think about going 10x is that you already have everything that you need to succeed. It might sound a little bit crazy, but some folks think that they need something outside of themselves. I need to acquire something. I need some sort of sacred piece of information. I need the circumstances to be right. This isn't the truth. And the reason I know this is I searched and searched and searched in my 20s for this sacred piece of information that would qualify me to go 10x, that would create an inflection point in my life. And when I really got clear that I had everything I needed, and it was more of a spiritual enlightenment moment, it wasn't more of I discovered this in a textbook or someone told it to me. I really saw this. I think it was from doing breath work, and the like this deep inner knowing came to me at the end of the session saying, listen, Ben, you've got everything you need. You've got absolutely everything you need. And I can say the same thing for you too. That if you're listening to this podcast and you're looking for some sort of sacred piece of information, you're looking for someone to not tap you on the shoulder saying you're ready, you're looking to qualify, graduate or anything, it's that you're largely looking outside of yourself for something that's inside. And that's why transformation is so relevant in this podcast today. It's about you transforming the parts of yourself that are already there. And what we're going to walk through in this podcast specifically is the truth about going 10x, making your life easier. Now, so many people, when they've done the scorecard, so if you're listening to this, I created a scorecard to help you work out where would be best place to put your energy, your time, your investments to focus on in order to help you go 10x. And it's in the link to this podcast. And a lot of people answer the question, I believe a 10x goal will make my life more difficult. Well, I'm going to be talking about how 10x will actually make your life easier. Okay, it'll make it way easier. We're going to look at like having gone 10x before, because, and this is another one, it's another question in the scorecard. A lot of people don't see how they've actually done this before. Like going from crawling to walking, so literally going from not being able to talk, graduating from preschool to high school to university, getting your first job. There's been steps where you've gone 10x throughout your life, but you haven't looked back. You've constantly been what we'd call in the gap. Okay, so you're like, okay, well that's my vision. I've never really surmounted to that. I've never really measured up to that. So, as Steve Jobs says, you can only connect the dots looking backwards. And this is where you slow down, you go, hang on a second, actually, when I went from a personal trainer to a coach, or a coach to an online coach, that was a 10x jump, because it gave me 10x the capacity, it gave me 10x the time back, etc., etc. Okay, so we're going to walk through that. It's really important that we zone in on your zone of genius. Now, this is a concept that I took from Gay Hendricks. So Gay Hendricks is an incredible speaker, coach. He was actually the coach of Michael Dell, the guy who owns Dell Computing. And he talks largely about these zones of genius, excellence, competence, and incompetence. And a lot of people operate from so many parts of their zone of incompetence or even competence, and they're not working in their zone of genius. So identifying your zone of genius or even excellence is so important if you want to go 10x. And as we go through, as ever, we're going to go through, we're going to walk through the statements on the scorecard so you have a better understanding of why these are especially important to you and how you can go and take pragmatic steps to amend, change, adapt, and transform those areas. So let's start with the question, what is transformation? Because I always used to have this in body transformation where, what's the difference between losing weight and a body transformation? Well, I would see people who had lost a bit of weight and you go up to them and had a conversation. They looked a little bit different, but they looked different. Like they actually looked maybe a little bit lighter, yet they may have lost a lot on the scale. They looked only a little bit different. But they were still the same people with the same habits. And you knew as soon as they left that diet, they were going to bounce back to where they were before. And we all know that. We may have been that person before. You've gone to like some sort of popular weight watching group and you've lost a bit of weight, you felt good for a while and you've reverted back to your old behaviors. Well, that's change. Transformation is where you become somebody totally different. Now, this is where you walk up to someone and they have totally changed. You're like, oh my gosh, my reference point for this person is not what I'm seeing in front of me. They visually look different. They are glowing. They've got lots of energy. Their confidence is different. Their body might be different. They are talking about, maybe they've got a family now they didn't have before. They've got their own business. They have gone through a real transformation. And I was really lucky to have such a big grounding in this as a coach, because my whole business in Fast Way to Fitness was about my catchphrase was transform your body, transform your life. And a large proportion of the people who came through our doors would transform their body, and you would see this then put in place a series of transformations in their life. They'd leave their partner or they'd marry their partner. They would start a family. They would have another child. They would get the promotion. They would perhaps leave a job and go into entrepreneurship. It was a big, big catalyst for transformation. Now, what I noticed, especially like this was a big, big thing, is someone who would come through the door and I would have to wrestle them to creating a goal that was just a little bit about what they've outside what they've achieved before. They never seemed as motivated. Yet the people that came in saying, I need to lose 20% of my body fat by X date. I want to run this marathon. I want to do this thing. They had this impossible goal. They said, Ben, I don't know how I'm going to do it, but I'm going to do it somehow. And I just see you as a part of this. I'm just thinking as I'm sharing this, one guy came into my office and he said, I'm considering getting a gastric band. I honestly think that that's the only option. I've struggled with weight for such a long time. I've never been able to get off this yo-yo. I get lean, then I get super fat. Anyway, long story short, the gastric band would cost like 15 grand. And I said, we could probably solve this for around about 5 with one-to-one personal training. We're going to go super deep. We're going to do the actual training, and then we're actually going to help you with the mindset as well. And he absolutely transformed. He's one of my best friends now. He's actually marrying my partner and I. He's the registrar for our wedding in Santorini. He transformed his behavior, his thoughts about his behaviors, the way that he showed up to his food, the way he thought about food, his attitude, everything changed. And there were so many clients like him, because what happened was, it's like someone with a 2X goal would say, I want to lose a bit of weight. Be as fit as I was maybe 5 years ago. They're talking about the past. They're talking about something maybe small as well. Whereas someone with a 10X goal, like he had, would say, I want to be the leanest I've ever been before. I want to be able to barely recognize myself in the mirror, not just physically, emotionally, but I want to see myself transform. I want to be able to do things like a marathon or go and be with my kids and like go up a mountain. They could see themselves as being someone totally different. Now, person A, their results would be meaningful. The 2X goal person, their results would be meaningful, but not significant enough to cause a change in their nervous system, their identity, their personal standards. They would get a result while still maintaining a lot of these things. They could probably still hang around with the same people, smoke, drink, maybe have the habits of theirs. They would probably get away with some of their old bad habits sticking around. But their meek vision of what they were capable of meant it was 10 times more likely that they would go back to their old place. And I saw this with so many people. The thing that people don't disclose in body transformation, a lot of coaches, is that it is true. I've got a result, like an incredible result with around about a third of my clients. And I'm really proud of that. But there was also a third that got an okay result and a third that just didn't get any results at all. And this is the game of body transformation. It's never advertised on the front end, but that's the truth. I'd always see the people with these meek visions always revert back to their old behaviours. And it was sad because I'd see them I lived in a small town called Llandudno, Conway. And I'd see them about and they would be very embarrassed when they saw me. They'd have had a great result, maybe had lost 2, 3, 4 stone and not reset their goal to something that's really pushing them. And I'd see them 2 years later and they would, I honestly could see the shame when someone would see me and they'd put it all back on their weight again and they would see me and have to rationalize it or to explain what had gone on. And I just felt it was sad, but I understood the psychological mechanisms that were not in place to help them get there. And it's not, this is me commenting as a coach. Obviously, you can take a horse to water, but you can't make it drink. So it's both parts of the system that needs to work. So the people who set their sights really low were creating their future from their past. So what would happen is that they would say often, I'm going to get this kind of result because this is the result I've got in the past. I just want to get back to this result. So they were out of a move of certainty or fear, in fact, like pushing them into new territory. They didn't realize that you can't behave like your past in order to achieve your future results. So what would often happen is because their goal wasn't motivating enough, wasn't inspiring enough, it didn't stretch them. They didn't have to be someone different. They didn't have to transform. They didn't have to let go of things that didn't serve them in order to achieve that. They would achieve that, those things were still in place, and it would pull them back into where they were. So hopefully this is making a bit of sense, because this is honestly what is so necessary in the transformational phase of the 5 steps of going 10x. You've got to see the steps that you need to take are in the 20%, and the things that you need to get rid of are in the 80%. So you're actually getting rid of a lot of behaviors, thoughts, people's, in fact. It could be hours spent in the day. It could be tasks that you do. You're getting rid of so much because you're going to focus on the 20%, and that becomes what creates the transformation. And I can share just a little bit about my journey. Like, I was a personal trainer. I worked all day. And then I did a personal training in the evening. And I had to choose to get rid of 80% of my hourly, like my day, in order to be a full-time personal trainer. So when I left my safe job in a college, I handed my notice in. My hand was shaking. I was so nervous because I was saying to my manager, who just put me through my higher, qualifications, my PGCE, my masters and things like that. And she was like, Ben, are you sure that you want to do this? And I'm like, yeah, I am, because I'm actually getting back 80% of the hours in my day. And I went from working from 6 a.m. till like 9, 10 at night in the college. I'm doing my boot camp. I'm doing my personal training, to working 3 hours a day and then spending the rest of the day literally sat in Costa Coffee, drinking way too much coffee, reading constantly for hours on end, getting parking tickets because my car had been sat in the space for way too long as I was just comfortable. It was amazing, but that was a 10x jump. But can you see that I had got rid of 80% of the thing that was keeping me stuck, which was my college job, and then I was super grateful for that. It paid for a lot of my education. It gave me a lot of understanding. It gave me a really good income, but it wasn't the thing that was going to help me go 10x. It was the same when I left the gym. The gym was a geographic constraint for me. I wanted to travel the world. I wanted to have more experiences. And in leaving the gym, it allowed me to explore 80% of the world more. I didn't have to be in the gym all the time. So what transformation is really about is looking at your life like 80-20 and say, right, well, it's the 20% of this which is really going to move the needle for me, that's really going to transform. And so this is what's needed for 10x transformation, to be able to go all in on the 20% and let go of the 80%. Now, this might look like for you, it could be the time that you're spending in two different jobs. I speak to so many people who are leaving one career and going into the next. They might be employed, going into self-employed. They might be in one role, going to the next. And it's being able to let go of 80% of the task, responsibility, maybe the time, maybe the bandwidth that's keeping you stuck in that role or that space in your life. The next thing is to understand that going 10x is not about doing more. It can't be, because otherwise you will just end up with less and less capacity. As you ascend even a career, you're paid to think and you're paid to leverage and you're paid to be effective, not busy. And the amount of times I've worked with managers, C-suite executives who have taken what I would call the farmer mindset to a role of that magnitude, they've ended up burnt out, broken, and wanting to do something else. And it's all about getting them to be way, way more effective with their leadership. So I've put here, to be the magician, not the mule. It's to learn that you are the person that is responsible for wand waving, not plow making. Another thing that needs to be in place in order for you to go 10x is creation happens from the goal backwards. Now, we talked about this in vision, but what we want to do is we look at where we want to be at the goal, and we say, what's the 20% of my current or even my proposed tasks, activities, actions that are going to get me there? But you cannot do that without the goal, because otherwise you'll just create from your current reality. So this is a really important way of thinking. I might have mentioned it in previous podcasts. There's a book called The One Thing. It really does talk about this in detail, where you have the someday goal, then you have the 10-year goal, then you have the 5, the 3, the 1, then you have the 90-day, the month, the week, and then today. And you constantly nurture that ability to work with that zoom in and zoom out mindset, because that's so, so helpful when you can operate like that. And the final thing is that it needs to be a commitment to being unique and different. I was speaking to a coach yesterday, and she said to me, Ben, whenever I want to put myself out there as a coach, I've been a coach for 10 years, or actually more than that. She worked at the highest level of football. She was sharing how she sees so many coaches out there. And that is the thing, that there is an absolute flood of people going into the online spaces now, personal trainers, coaches, consultants, XYZ. But just because they are there, it does not mean that they are a threat to your business. It means that they're validating and verifying that there's a massive market for this. And if you are exceptional at what you do, the cream always rises to the top, and you've got to show up for that. So, and I often talk to Poppy about this. So, Poppy's a consultant coach online. She's phenomenal at what she does. She's very, very good with offer and marketing and messaging, and she's rapidly understanding coaching as well. She's been doing it probably about 3, 4, maybe 5 years now, more and more so. I've been doing it maybe 14 years. Oh, yes, 14 years. Oh, maybe more. No, it's more. Oh, my gosh, maybe more. But I've got way more experience than her. She's miles better at marketing than me. Miles better at marketing. And she's very good at showing up, at being unique and different to what's out there, being very, very clear in her messaging and her marketing. And she helps people do the same. She often outperforms me in income and client numbers. Why? Because she's so good at that. So this is why when you go 10x, a commitment to being unique and different means that you can really be the specialist. Now, if you think about this, there are hundreds, if not thousands of GPs out there. Thousands, definitely hundreds. Thousands of general practitioner doctors out there. But the specialists, the surgeons, the consultants, the high-level, big, well-paid experts, they have specialized in a certain area of their field. They've gone a mile deep, not a mile wide. So that's why if you want to go 10x, we need to look at what's your mile deep? Who specifically are you going to serve? What problem are you going to specifically solve? Really going 10 times deeper than anyone else out there. So let's walk through a couple of these because this is going to really help you when it comes to taking action on this stuff as well. So to be able to go all in on the 20%. So it was actually Tony Robbins that said this quote is like, when you want to move forward in your life, you need to take massive action and you need to burn the boats. And what he means by that is to go all in. And all in means taking massive action and giving yourself every reason to succeed, and also burning the boats so you don't have to go backwards. And letting go of 80% of the things that aren't serving you. And this is where courage, this is where bold behavior, this is where leadership and self-leadership come in. But here's what I've observed as the difference between struggling and successful leaders, including myself, by the way. Struggling leaders create the mantra, if it is to be, then it is up to me. They pride themselves on being the sole reason why results are created. Whereas, like, I remember this in my fitness business. I created my thinking that I was responsible for everything. I got myself to the point where I was so overburdened with tasks, I could never work on the business. I was always working in the business and spent my life firefighting. And this is so important to acknowledge if you've been in this place, is that you're creating from this place like, okay, it's up to me to make sure everything's done. It's up to me. And it is at its core, but at the same time is that if you are trying to hang on to everything, it means that you haven't got the emotional bandwidth to be potent in your actions. So when I was 3 years into my fitness business, I realized I was actually exceptional at the consulting and the coaching part and the training more so than the training of people. Zone of excellence was training people. Zone of genius was consulting, like helping them see the small things in their life that would create the big changes. So I enjoyed sitting coaching someone more than I did actually training them. So if I had a personal training client, we do 3 sessions in the training room and in the gym, and we do 1 session in the consulting room. And I felt that I had more value in that 30 minutes, 20 minutes in the consulting room than 3 hours. So I created a project to get as much of the training off my calendar as possible. And this could be the first step for you. Your first project from listening to this podcast could be like, right, okay, I'm going to work out what my 80% is and get as much of that stuff off my calendar as possible. Because as soon as I did this and I started doing way more coaching, 2 things happened. I was less busy. I was way more effective getting better results. But I also got way better at coaching way quicker. So if I would have hung on to all the training in my calendar, it means that I would have been staying the same. Whereas because I went all in on coaching, saying, guys, can you fulfill the training by, I think it was like May, I think it was my birthday of that year. I was like, listen, by my birthday, I don't want to be doing any of the boot camps, any of the training. It was a really difficult task. And I made that commitment, and I really went all in on coaching people to get better results. And that's where my coaching ability just accelerated. Although I was handsomely rewarded for training people, I didn't feel like it stretched me. I enjoyed it. I was good at it. I wasn't exceptional at it. I know much better programmers than me. I was very, very good. I was very good. You know, I took a really big interest, and I still train and I have a really good eye for looking at form and like what are the right exercise selection and stuff like that. But it just didn't light my fire. And you might be the same in your role, by the way. You could do it with your eyes closed, and that isn't a good thing because you're not being pushed. So much so, I loved it, but it wasn't a zone of genius. So my decision to come off the training floor wasn't received well by clients. And this is the thing, I think it's the first obstacle you're going to come across in the 10x transformation part, is that you're not likely going to have your decisions about going 10x well received by the people around you. Say you've got a group of clients, like I loved taking boot camps. My energy was high. I would jump around. I'd give people feedback. I would connect with people and make them laugh. I would push them, challenge them, sit on them, all sorts of stuff. And when I made the decision not to do that as frequently anymore, I had loads of quip comments from clients who were like, oh, right, yeah, well, you're too good for us now. You're only doing that. And it's natural and normal for people to do that. it's in their interest to have me stay doing the same thing all the time because, well, they believed it was in their interest. So the problem was me doing that meant I was bottlenecked and I didn't have enough time. And actually, after doing a 45-minute boot camp where I jump around and give loads of energy, for me to go and record a podcast or do some marketing or do videos like I'm doing today, I was tired. I was burnt out because I've been jumping around. So I had to get rid of that out of my calendar. When I did that, my income tripled, and I got much, much greater impact because I could spend months training people in the gym, but I could cause way bigger shifts by helping them think and see their life differently and see themselves differently in the coaching room. So if I could get people one-to-one and be successful with that and get a good model for that and then deliver it online for groups, that would be even better. Now, that's exactly what I did. So choosing your 20% may not be popular with your partner, your business partner, your customers, your vendors. However, it's it's the cost of entry into the big leagues. Fear-driven leaders never make it past this part of their journey. They never get to that part. And I remember sitting with a lady once, and she was talking about her confidence. And in order for her to have the next role in her career, she needed to be able to speak publicly. That was the 20% that she needed to focus on. And she came to my gym, she lost loads of weight, she started speaking publicly, and that transformed her career. She went from just a manager in the NHS to a high-ranking leader just because she was speaking more confidently, she was speaking more frequently, she went all in on that, and she got multiple promotions. So that body transformation probably made her the thick end of 50 plus grand in a salary. And I'm sounding like I'm selling you body transformation here, but I've seen these things happen. But what was the actual thing that she went all in on? Well, it was a body transformation because it gave her the confidence, and there's so many reasons why a body transformation will give you confidence. But she went all in on speaking in front of people. She showed up frequently. She spoke at any meeting, any conference, and she really went all in on that. And many of my clients will do that. Will go from a lower level communication skill to a higher level communication skill, e.g. speaking as part of a meeting versus speaking on stage in front of hundreds of people. That's a big shift. That's a real transformation. So how do you do it? A really simple step is to grab a piece of paper and a coffee. Everything you have to, and it's got to be a good coffee, not Starbucks. And right at the top of the paper. And this is like the first step in doing this transformational work is, what do I intend to use the rest of my life for? So this is starting with the end in mind. And write continuously for 15 minutes. And you'll likely get clear on the things that your 20% should be taking you closer towards. Now think about this as a question. What do I want to use the rest of my life for? And it might be uncomfortable. And as you sit there, you might not know. And you might have to sit in the discomfort of being like, oh my gosh, I haven't really thought about this. I've never been really committed to doing this. But trust me, if you do this enough times and you keep doing it, you could do it for a week, every day. Sit down with your cup of coffee in the morning and ask yourself that question. What do I want to use the rest of my life for? And see what comes up. And your 20%, the things that in your current calendar, the things that you do on a weekly, daily, a monthly, whatever basis, do they align with taking you towards those things on that piece of paper that you've written? It's a really good place to start, and it's a really easy one. Not easy writing it though. Not easy writing it. I'm going to acknowledge that. Okay. The second thing you can do is you can list out 4 columns on a piece of paper, and you write down zone of incompetence, zone of competence, zone of excellence, and zone of genius. Now, these are the 4 quadrants that Gay Hendricks talks about, that you actually want to be working in your zone of genius, but we spend most of our time working in the other 3. Now, what you want to do is look at your calendar, look what you do in the week, and start to put things down as like, oh, actually, do you know what? Like, I clean the house. I clean before the cleaner. And we have a cleaner come around. She's come around in about an hour. And she's really good at cleaning. Like, she can get round and do more in an hour than it takes me like 3 or 4. So I should not be doing that I should definitely have a cleaner in order to be in my zone of genius more. For sure, I shouldn't be messy and shouldn't be leaving my stuff around the house. Like, absolutely, personal standards are really important to me. But equally, when it comes to the deep clean of the house, that's not a job that I should be doing. Yeah, zone of incompetence. I'm terrible at scheduling myself. Actually, I'm incompetent at that. I do it really badly. So I have my PA. And part of the work that we do together is we sit down every single week and she asks me, well, what's in the calendar? And she helps me schedule myself. And I need that. And I'm not ashamed to admit that. That went in that column. So when I saw it go in that column, I took an action straight away. I hired a PA. Zone of competence. So zone of competence is something that you can do, but you're not super skilled. You're not super effective. It's not very impactful. And this is, for me, is like video editing. I'm actually competent at video editing, but it takes me a lot of time. It takes a lot of energy. I have to focus a lot. I don't really know all the answers. And it's not an effective use of my energy or bandwidth. So these are the things that I would probably be best to outsource to people that would probably do them way better, way faster, and more effectively than me. And that's about the who. Who can I find to do this? The third column is the zone of excellence. And this is probably going to be around about 80% of your working week. The things that you do really, really well. Now, if you're a skilled service provider, there's probably a lot of things in your week that you do really well. And this can become from marketing, it can be writing posts, it can be communication, reaching out, sales, all that sort of stuff if you're a solopreneur. But it's like looking at what are the things that you are very, very good at, but if you were to let them go, it would allow you to step into the zone of genius. This might be the current offer you have with clients. It could be working with a certain subset of your clients. It could be working with your group. And it's like, well, actually, do you know what? If I just focused on these 20% of the clients or that I work with, I could actually not even have to do 80% of the work I'm currently doing. I was talking before about leaving the college for me. Like, I was a great university lecturer, but it wasn't my zone of genius. I was good at it, maybe excellent. The kids enjoyed my sessions, but it wasn't my zone of genius. And then the final one is, what is my zone of genius? And this might be where you actually have to ask for feedback. You might be asking me, you might be asking your coach, it could be a co-worker, it could be one of your customers. Like, ask them, what specifically have I helped you do? And that might take a little bit of creation, getting really, really clear on what your zone of genius is, okay? And then ask yourself, what's the 20% of my 20%? And this can be the thing that helps you get hyper clear. So again, I've referenced this in a previous podcast. I was a fantastic coach. So I worked in transformational coaching. I worked with women, and I started working with people in the legal sector, and then I actually worked with 3 or 4 barristers. I really found that 20% of the 20% was my zone of genius at that point in my life. And that's how I work. I've really targeted those people, and it really helped me get great results because I really understood them. There's something about the dynamic between me being an imperfectionist, a lot of these ladies, women specifically, being perfectionists. There was a really good dynamic, and I helped them be more imperfect and get better results. So it was a really important step to take of looking at the 20% of my 20%. Okay, this is what people often don't do. People call it niching, but it can be just being more specific. It can be being more of the surgeon or the specialist than the generalist. So once you've done those 2 exercises, you'll kind of have a good idea of what it is you need to go in on to do that, to create 10x shifts in your life. But we've got to remember, in order to 10x, you have to focus on your leadership as your main skill. It has to be about leverage, not hustle. You can work hard, but the essence of how you behave and think at 10x is with leverage. And I looked at even my previous business. I was doing 30 hours of coaching a week or 30 hours of sessions. And in my current mastermind, the 10X mastermind, we do 3. So it's 3 highly potent sessions a week, or highly potent hours, which are blocked together. And instead of being able to serve 30 clients one-to-one, I can now serve hundreds of clients because of the way that I've created a system, because I've been able to think and really, really create that. Instead of just constantly reacting to clients' needs, I've got a system that they work through in order to get a promised result. So this happened over about 5 years. So if you're a starting coach or consultant, this might not happen overnight, but it's just giving you places to start. But in the time I don't spend with my clients, when I've created more leverage, I don't fill it with more work. And this is a big part of the transformational phase, is that when a lot of people came to my gym, they'd learned that a 40-minute hard session was way more effective than 3 hours of cardio a day. And they'd also find the foods and the ways of eating that were 10% of the bandwidth that they'd use in the past, like counting calories and all this sort of stuff that wasn't working for them. So I created a system that would give them back more energy, time, and bandwidth. And in that space, that's exactly what I wanted them to create, was space, time to look after themselves, time to spend time with the kids, their family. And this is what's really important, is that nature abhors a vacuum. So as soon as you create space, if you're thinking like a 2X person, like the farmer, you'll fill it with stuff. Whereas if you are truly committed to going 10X, you'll fill it with space. You'll leave it and you'll guard it and you'll use it effectively to look after yourself. You'll maybe go and invest in a coach, get fit, get a nutritionist, maybe something that you're going to get rid of an ailment or a back issue or anything like that. Is getting yourself and treating yourself like an athlete so you perform at your best more often. But if you see 10X as adding stress, you're creating your vision from your past. If you see 10X as adding time, you're not thinking with leverage. And if you see 10X as adding cost, you're not creating enough margin. And that's a really important one, is that charging well for your services and being able to work way deeper with fewer clients may be more effective for you than having lots of people and charging very little. I've always worked better with way more intimate relationships. I know people that have done fitness and nutrition and even coaching way cheaper than me, but because I charge a little bit more, I can go 10 times deeper with someone because I can have that time to really get to know them, to spend time with them, to think about them. Whereas if you've got a scaled model, Joe Wicks would probably not know Mary and his system from Adam. And that's really important. And this is what we want to create, is the magician versus the mule mindset. So there's a fable it's called the magician versus the mule. In a nutshell, you've got to move from self-gratification, being about hard work, to results. The mule works hard and has enough to get by, whereas the magician works smart and has enough to give away. That's the distinction between the two, is that you can work your whole life and be the mule. You can do great work and you can have enough to get by, and you can earn month to month, you can earn very, very well. And a lot of people live the whole life like that, but it's hard. The magician earns that much. There's enough in abundance to give away. There's enough in excess to give away. And that's how I wanted to create my life. They've got enough time, I've got enough energy, I've got enough money. So I've got enough time to give to people that I love. I've got enough energy to show up for the people that I love. And I've got enough money to invest in people, to give to charity, to do things with my friends and family. And so that's really, really important. And that's the difference between the magician and the mule. I could do a whole podcast on that just in itself. Okay, so this is about, when it comes about creation happening from the goal backwards. When we look at the goal backwards, we want to make sure that if you go back to the vision podcast, if you haven't yet created your vision, go and do that. Because then what we want to do is we want to then operationalize that vision into 10, 5, 1 year visions. And then we start to look at the 20% that's going to get us closer to that on a daily basis. I love what Dusan Djukic says is the best way to create the future is to predict. The best way to predict the future is to create it. This is largely about saying, well, actually, do you know what? If I go and do that thing, achieve that result, I'm far more likely to be able to predict that I'm going to get to that 1, 5, 10 someday vision. And here's the truth about the goal. And this is my work with Hina Khan. I didn't get this at first when she first started explaining this, but the truth about the goal is it already exists. It already exists because you've been given the ability to think about it. You simply got to match up the steps that align to that goal. And you show up as if it's already being created. And this is where this kind of divine inner wisdom comes up. And this is what I'm experiencing at the moment, is that I'm so clear on where I want to get the 10X tribe over the next year, 3 and 5 years, and what I want to do with my coaching. I'm so clear on that. Whenever I'm struggling, I ask myself, what does the 1 year version of Ben tell me to do in this instance? And I'm almost always greeted with some really divine wisdom that I can go and use to move forwards. Yet the past Ben would probably just see obstacles. And this isn't about being delusional. It's not about asking. It's not about asking yourself, what would my future? It's not just about the law of attraction. Sorry, it's about really, really getting clear on, what does the higher version of my conscious mind do in this moment where I'm met with an obstacle or a challenge? And this is where it delivers such a great return on investment doing this work. You'll often know the answer. And the final one, sorry to take a little drink there, is a commitment to being unique and different. So think about this. If you are a consultant, a coach, if you're in a career, what is going to make you really stand out? One of the problems people go to 10X experience is the trap by being concerned about saying no to perhaps large amount of money, revenue, opportunity, or ego-driven activities like speaking. Like, I get offered to speak so often and it's not aligned with what I want to do, but it fills my ego, not my bank balance. And you might get this like, but so-and-so wants me to speak on stage, but does it fill your bank balance? Does it actually pay you well, or does it just fill your ego? And so many people get caught in this trap. It's like, think about being able to say no to things that don't fit with your vision. I had a buddy ring me up the other day and he said, oh, I've got an idea for you, got a business idea. And I just was thinking, I should have said something I didn't. I was like, I don't need any more business ideas. I need execution and implementation on the ones I have. And that's 99% of people I've ever worked with. They're not void of ideas. They're void of transformation and implementation. Okay, let's take a little break where we're just going to go through the statements and I'm just going to walk you through them just to make sure that you understand how to take action on each of them, and then we'll close. So I know the 20% of my actions that get me 80% of my results. The activities I've talked about in this workshop, this podcast, should suggest that to you now, okay? I'm clear on what 80% of the activities I need to do to go to others. So, sorry, I'll say that again. I'm clear on what 80% of the activities I do need to go to others. And what that means is I know the 80% I need to get off my plate. So once you've got clear on the 20% you need to do, you then need to make a plan of how you're going to get rid of the other 80. And this is where I am great at delegating comes in. It's the ability to empower people to not just do the things that you do as well as you do them, but do them miles better. Finding the who's, the people out there who are better, faster, more effective, more articulate than you at dealing with the problems that you were spending 80% of your time dealing with. They are always out there, and they are always way faster and more effective than you, trust me. There's the next one here. It says, I hang on to work way longer than I need to. And this is where you've started to realize that actually, yeah, I've been doing this task for way too long. I can do this with my eyes closed is how you'll express it. And when we can get clear on those tasks and we can get them off our plate so we can be then doing things that are uncomfortable and difficult and different, that's when we're going to be experiencing more transformation, and transformation way quicker. I regularly reassess my vital tasks and delegate or delete ones that I don't need to be doing. And this is something that we need to be doing on a quarterly basis. Minimum is like looking at your tasks that are in your calendar, that are in your organization, and saying to yourself, who can do this faster, better, more effective than me? Or do we need to stop doing that entirely? Because that can be eating up precious bandwidth that just doesn't move the needle. And I remember we regularly did this at Fastway to Fitness. We'd look at the program and say, well, we offer this, and we actually expend a lot of organization and energy around doing this, and we don't think it adds any value, so we would take it away. Yeah, 20% of the people might complain, but 80% of the people didn't make a difference to them. Okay? Like 20% of the 20% of the things that made a massive difference. I invest in coaching. Now, here's the thing about if you invest in a coach or not. If you're a coach listening to this and you don't have a coach, it's like a personal trainer being visibly overweight. People notice that you're out of integrity. You're telling them they need a coach and you don't have a coach. It's like telling someone you need to eat well and you don't eat well yourself. It's like, well, I've transcended the need for a coach. And that inherently isn't true, because you can always have a great coach that's going to move you to the next level. So think about that. If you're listening to this and you're a coach without a coach, you are out of integrity. You're trying to sell something that you're not buying yourself, or you're not bought into yourself. And that's why lean personal trainers seem to get clients, because people can visibly see that they buy into what they're teaching people. They might not be the best personal trainer in the world, but they can see that they've bought into the thing that you need to eat well and train hard, okay? And the final one is I have 10x'd in the last year. Now, what I want you to do is think about the last time that you either took a big leap of faith, you pushed the big old believe button, trust button, or that there was a significant shift in your work or your life. This might be having kids, it might be you're getting married, it could be leaving a job, starting a job, it could be moving from one place to another. These are all 10x jumps. And whenever I've done this exercise with people, they've always seen that they've had these leaps before. And that gives you way more confidence to go 10x in the future. So they're the statements. That's the breakdown of all of this. This has been a great podcast. I've really enjoyed sharing about transformation. It's something that I'm really, really passionate about. And here's the thing about transformation, is that when you transform everyone else around you. You transform their lives, you transform their businesses, you transform everything, because you've been willing to go on that journey, which is difficult, but it's super rewarding. Thank you so much for listening to this podcast. Now, if you want to create your next 10x inflection, you've been listening to these podcasts, here's what you can do. If you go on to the scorecard, which will be attached in this video, you can do the scorecard. First of all, do the scorecard if you haven't done that already, because it's going to give you way more of an insight as you're going through this audio series. The second thing is, on the scorecard, it will have, when you finish it, it will tell you when the next workshop is. I do these every 3 weeks. I give you 3 hours where we invest time together. I will show you about 10x versus 2x. You'll probably be well referenced after listening to all these podcasts. But then I'll show you how to create your vision and why having a great vision will transform your life. And then the final part, I'll actually coach you into action. So I'll help you take that first step. So say you create a big vision on the call, I will spend as much time as needed, and I'll hold space for you and help you take that first step. You'll create a commitment on the call, and then you'll go off and take it. It's absolutely free. It's complimentary, and it's amazing. So, get on one of those free workshops. They are really, really, really helpful. And then the final one is that there is a 10X Tribe school group that is also on the back end of the scorecard. If you want to join any of those three things, get in touch. The links are all attached to this podcast. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you on the next podcast.